Electricast.
This episode is brought to you by Audi. The road is calling. Embrace the thrill of the drive with the all-new, fully electric Audi Q6 e-tron. Featuring effortless power, serious acceleration, and advanced Audi tech. It's not just a new EV. It's a new way to experience driving. The all-new, fully electric Audi Q6 e-tron is here. The next chapter of Audi starts now.
This episode is brought to you by Peacock. The new Peacock original documentary, Matthew Perry, A Hollywood Tragedy, dives deep into the beloved actor's rise to fame and his tragic death. 5 people, including Perry's personal assistant, 2 medical doctors, and an alleged Hollywood drug dealer known as the Ketamine Queen, were charged with conspiracy to illegally provide Perry with the ketamine. Explore the details of the case in this heartbreaking special, streaming now only on Peacock.
Welcome to Her Extraordinary Life by Design, where we celebrate women who are shaping their lives one extraordinary day at a time. I'm your host, Leslie Gaudet, self-care coach for women who are ready to make self-care a priority to support them in life and business. Every week, I'll be speaking with inspiring women from various walks of life who will share their personal journeys and will discover how they have fearlessly carved their own paths as business owners, passionately pursuing their dreams and creating a meaningful impact on their communities. So let's get started. Hello, and welcome to Extraordinary Life by Design podcast, where we celebrate women from all over the world and who are making an incredible impact on their communities. I'm Leslie Gaudet, I'm your host, and today we're talking with Liz Toombs. Liz is known as the go-to decorator for sorority interiors on college campuses. The work of Liz and the PDR Interiors team can be seen on more than 100 campuses spread across 25 states. A leader in the decorating industry for nearly 15 years, Liz is a graduate of the University of Kentucky and an alumna of Alpha Gamma Delta. Mentoring women is a keystone of PDR, something Liz learned to value through her fraternity experience. Helping to preserve that experience for current and future members of women's organizations is what drives her focus on sorority housing projects. A trusted media source, Liz is quoted in notable outlets including the Wall Street Journal, the Huffington Post, the Associated Press, and Realtor.com. Additionally, she launched and hosts the Sorority Chat podcast, which features interviews with leaders in the National Greek system. Wow, Liz, you have such an incredible story. I'm so thrilled to have you on the show and cannot wait to get into more of all of this and what you do. So welcome.
Yes, thanks for having me, Leslie. I'm excited to chat today.
Me as well. I've been looking forward to this. Now, I know you've built such an impressive career. I mean, I just read off a lot of information, which is, to me, I was reading through it earlier and I was like, wow, like she's just been doing so much. You've built this amazing career as a decorator, a leader in your industry, particularly in sorority housing. So can you share what inspired you to pursue this path and how your experiences in Alpha Gamma Delta influenced your approach to leadership?
Yes, absolutely. So the path is all kind of intertwined with my college experience, specifically within sorority. So I always was interested in decorating and design and, just anything within a home from a very young age. And then there was the first iteration of the TV show Trading Spaces that came out. And I was hooked on that. It was kind of before HGTV was really a thing. It was on TLC. And I remember watching just tons of those episodes. And there was one episode I caught while I was living in the sorority house at the University of Kentucky, and a designer redid a sorority space. And I was just like, wow, that's so cool. Like, that can't be real though, just kind of put it out of my brain and so on. And anyway, fast forward to after I'm out of school, I went to school and majored in textiles, and so it could be fashion or home fashion focused. I wanted to go the home fashion route. Then I'd worked in the industry for a while, and a fraternity, a men's organization, came to me and asked me to help with their house. And so I said, sure. And then I was referred to a women's organization on the same campus. And from there, I just started to see, okay, I think there's something to this. My experience in the Greek system meant a lot to me. So it would be really neat to get to create spaces for these students. I think there's a lot there. And so, fast forward, I've been in business for 16 years, but I've been doing the Greek side of things since about 2009. Well, yeah, 2010 probably. So just shy of how long I've been in business. And now it takes up the majority of our work. We tend to focus on that clientele, and that ties into the leadership side of things that you asked about, because my leadership skills were really honed within my time in the sorority, and then I was able to build on that in my professional life. And now it's kind of come full circle. And as an alum, I am able to facilitate a leadership program through Alpha Gamma Delta for current students and exemplary students and leaders. And I appreciate how all of this comes together, and all of it plays off of each other, if you will.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I didn't have the college experience. I took some college courses, but I didn't really have the college experience. My upbringing was as long as I graduated high school, the mindset was, okay, go and get a job. That's
Yeah.
what I was taught. And so really didn't have that. I really was the first one in my, on my mom's side that really finished high school. So that was a big deal. And
Mhm.
so like that, I didn't really have anything beyond that. And that's okay.
Yeah.
As I got into my career and decided what I wanted to do, I fell into working in law. That's for another story. But I ended up falling into that. And as I did, I started taking courses in college. So that's how I got my college experience. But I love the fact that you actually had a real college experience where you were part of a sorority. And then to not only be brought back into the sorority focus, but to be brought in first by the men's fraternity and them asking you for support in helping them with their home, and then having the women's organization then being connected to them. And now, along with how you design the sororities, you're also, like as you were saying, being a woman in leadership, having a leadership program that you can pour into these young women. I always feel like it's like paying it backwards to pay it forwards,
Yeah.
kind of, and
Yep.
so I love that you're doing that. That really resonated with me because, yeah, our young people are important to us. And if we can be at least a good influence, however that looks for us, even if the times have changed, we're still being that positive influence. That's what this
Mhm.
podcast is about. That's why I wanted to have this series around empowering women in leadership and why I asked you to be a part of that. So, breaking barriers as a woman in leadership often comes with unique challenges, which I'm sure because we still do live, unfortunately, we still do live in a male dominated world, right? So
Absolutely.
what were some of the biggest challenges that you faced while you were building PDR Interiors, and how did you overcome them?
The first one that comes to mind is I was 25 when I started my business. So very green, very young, looked young. And so, when you're going out onto a job site that's filled with male contractors and subcontractors, they're kind of looking at you funny. Like, what is this girl doing here? And this young girl at that. And so I really had to figure out ways to prove that, hey, I do know what I'm talking about. I, do belong here. It's kind of funny now to think about, but I used to wear fake glasses sometimes because if I was working with a clientele of an older age group, I wanted to help them feel comfortable. And as they were getting to know me and seeing that I knew what I was talking about, but I wanted them to kind of feel like maybe I had a little bit more years on me, if you will. So that was one challenge. And I think that's another reason I'm so passionate about coming back and bringing college age women up and supporting them and giving them experience and just showing them that you can do it. You can do anything. And, you really don't have to listen to what anyone else says. And so I think that all that kind of plays into the male dominated side of things you were talking about, as well as like the age side of it. I mean, I couldn't help it. How old I was is how old I was. And that's when the opportunity came about to start the business. So I just had to go for it.
Yeah, I love the fact that you brought in age well, I guess the reason I think is because I had a young visionaries podcast series back in September, I believe it was.
Uh huh.
And one of the women, she's a doctor, she's a psychiatrist, and she was between the age of 25 and 35. That was my criteria for
Uh-huh.
having the women on. And when I asked her a specific question, at first she felt a little uncomfortable with the question. And I told her, I want you to know that when I ask you a question, there's no judgment. It is coming from a place of, I want to know more about you.
Yep.
And I think it came down to what you just said, wanting to feel that I might look really young, but I am qualified to do what I do.
Mhm.
And for you, your way of doing that was to wear glasses to appear that you were more intelligent, to appear older to a demographic that was older than you. And I
Mhm.
think that's sad. I've learned so much from so many women, younger, much younger women, 30 years younger than I am. My first coach was 30 years younger than I am.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, and so for me, but she was good. She's good
Yeah.
at what she does. So age never came into it for me at all, ever. But I've never been that way. But I just love how you brought that in because that is something that I think a lot of women have probably had to face. Like, okay, if they're in specific types of jobs, like you were saying, male dominated type of industry, and they're looking at you, okay, well, does she qualify to do what she does?
Mhm.
Is it maybe her mom or her dad really the one that's, pulling the strings, telling her what to do? And it's like, yeah, no. And that's why I wanted to bring, like, as I said, the women on that I had in that particular series, because I wanted them to know, like, I want your voices to be heard. I respect your voices because I was there once before. And
Yeah.
now things have changed and I want you to be able to say like how life is for you. So yeah, thank you so much for, bringing that in because it's to me really important to know that just because you might be young doesn't mean that you're not qualified to do something. So thank you for that.
Exactly. And it's funny, something that you said about like, oh, it's not her mom or dad doing it. Another question I would get asked a lot is, do you do this full time? Like, is this your full time job? As if I was just someone who was just playing in it. And I think maybe the profession that is sometimes the vibe that people get is maybe I'm a stay at home mom who wants to do this on the side, but it's not a full blown business. Maybe I'm helping my friends. There's nothing wrong with that, but they're asking it in kind of a derogatory way, making it sound like
Mm.
there's something wrong with that, and then I have to say, "No, this is my full-time business, and I own it, and I've been doing it this long," and, try to not be defensive about it because, to your point, you have to assume someone's coming from a place of curiosity and not a place of judgment, and if they are judging you, then that's not on you.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's nothing that you can do. People judge. That's just human nature,
Mhm,
unfortunately. And if,
mhm.
and there's nothing that you have no control over that. You just have control over your responses to it. And yeah, so I love that.
Yes.
So I know that mentoring is really important for you. It's a keystone of your business. So how
Mhm.
do you approach mentorship within your team and the sorority community? And why is that so important to you?
I think I just have such fond memories of the women and men that helped me along the way as I was building my career. There's just a lot of people that stood out to me and really helped me, and I'd like to pay that forward. And so one of the ways I can do that is by offering internships within my business where college students can come and maybe they earn class credit, maybe they don't, but they can see the day-to-day of what goes on in a business like this, kind of get in there and do the work. And I say all the time to the college students I talk to, the more you can get exposed to the career you believe you want, the more either reassurance or redirection you will get. And I'd sure hate for you to wait until you've done 4 or 5 years of coursework to then get into the field and discover, ooh, I'm getting redirected. I actually don't like this. And so I think just, the earlier they can come and see, and I can't take on every intern that tries to come through. It's just not always feasible. So I'll offer, coffee appointments via Zoom, in person. They can come and shadow. I've done that with several high school students. Like I'm more than willing to let folks come in and do that type of thing. So that's one way that I try to mentor through the business. And then secondly is just, having my team, just bringing them in and trying to figure out where their strengths are and where they could use some encouragement from me and just how we can all kind of build each other up. I've been very fortunate that the longest tenured team member I have has been with me for over 10 years now. And so I think that says something about the camaraderie and about the way that we do things. And so within the business, that's specifically how I handle it. And then outside is, the involvement I mentioned with Alpha Gam and their leadership program, Empower. That's like a very specific thing. I'm doing that for the third year now. And I really enjoy getting to know like my smaller cohort of women. They're from campuses all across the country, all different walks of life. And so getting to know them. And you talked about learning from your coach that was significantly younger than you. I learned so much from these women and just hearing what's going on in their day-to-day life. And then obviously that also helps me to understand who my clientele is in work and to continue to stay tapped into that. So I get a lot of benefit from it as well. And then also going through the curriculum and reminding myself skills that I should be honing as a leader and just the things that I do.
Yeah, I love that. But what I love about the mentorship as well of being able to help them to figure out what it is that they truly do want to do. You
Mhm.
mentioned something about them not going through something that they all of a sudden have to course correct. They've already spent a lot of money because school is not cheap at all. I have a couple friends that are lawyers that actually ended up, one in particular, her first year out of law school, and she did a year in law, and she says, "This isn't for me." And I'm like, "Oh my gosh!" Like you just spent so much money.
Mhm.
Although it's not a complete wash, because I look at it as like, okay, you have this actual degree that you can use to some extent. You can use it whatever you decide to do. But to go through school believing that you wanted to be a lawyer and then a year out and you realize this isn't for me, that is a huge, huge thing that could have been avoided, I think, if there had been the conversation with someone like yourself, a mentor saying, "Hey, like, is this really what you want to do?" It's why
Mhm.
I think I advocate so much for parents to really talk to their children when they're saying, "Hey, I want to be a musician or a dancer, I want to be an astronaut," whatever that looks like, and just actually go through the steps with them saying, "Okay, well, what does this look like to you?" Like, let's take a long vision view of this. What does that look like for you? What do you think it's supposed to
Mhm.
happen? Because then when they actually get a bigger bird's eye view of what it is they think they want to do, then they either say, "Yeah, I wanna continue to pursue it," or, "No, actually, thank you for doing this with me because then I realize it's not what I want." But
Yeah.
I believe it's so important to have mentors, to go back into that's why I said, like, going back in what you're doing and going back into to the schools and talking to these young women, helping them to not only come into your company to actually shadow you, to become interns, whether it's for course credits or not, gives them an opportunity to see like what it's like in the real world because you don't really know. Even though you're in college, even though you're in an environment which is less structured, it's more on you to make sure you go to class, do the homework, do the work to pass to get the degree. There's it's still not the real world yet.
It's not.
And so I
You're
love that
so
you do
right.
that. I
Yeah.
love that
And
you do that.
it's funny that you brought up law as your example because another designer on my team, she did go to law school and thought that's what she wanted to do. She was always interested in this field, but was told that it wasn't a viable way to earn a living. And so she was steered towards law. And then she got into it and was like, absolutely not. This is not for me. And so she has switched and she's now getting to fulfill like her creative purpose and really enjoying the work that she does. But it took all of that experience. And then there's a lot of benefits, like you said, from what she learned through those courses. But yeah, I don't know. I think the more you can get out there and be curious about the world, the more information you'll get because we all kind of have a stereotypical opinion of what a job may be. And that may or may not be correct. So you don't know until you kind of dig in.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And even too, one of the things that I also know about being in the field of law for as long as I was is that you don't always have to have a degree to be in a particular field. Like
Yep.
some of the best people I've worked with came from different industries and they
Hmm.
just decided, like you were saying, someone who was in law who thought she was going to be a lawyer decided, no, this is not what I want to do. She has that to bring into so she understands particular laws. I'm sure there's a lot of laws within what you do that she can be a huge benefit for to read over and to even like to understand, verbiage and things like that. But
Mhm.
yeah, I just love the fact that you can change your mind and that it's okay. But to have someone to actually help you before you go down that road of spending so much money is also another great way as well. And so I love the fact that you're still involved with Alpha Gamma Delta, and I think that's how I said it, correct? Is that right?
Yeah,
I
you
hope.
got it. Uh-huh.
Excellent. I'm glad that you're still involved with them in the third year now for the leadership program, because this is a way for you not only to give back for them, but this helps them to then go back and give back to the girls coming up behind them. So I love it. It's a
Mhm.
win-win. So your leadership style, have you ever taken stock of your leadership style and how it's evolved over the years? Like, is there any guiding principles or philosophies that you rely on to lead effectively?
It's so funny that you asked me that because as we're about to start this next year of Empower, I had just taken a quiz about like leadership principles, like assessment. And this is the third time I've done it. And so I've been meaning to go back and to look at, based on those questions, how my leadership style has changed. But overall, I try to lead by example, right? I try to model the way. If I'm going to ask my team to do something, I've got to be willing to do it or have been there and done it myself within reason, right? Assuming that it's a skill set that I have. I'm just somebody who the do as I say, not as I do doesn't jive for me. I feel like we're kind of all in it together. And so that is probably the easiest summary, I'd say, of how I choose to lead. I tend to be very open with my folks and just have honest conversations. Actually, our number one value at PDR is be human first. And I just try to remember that every time I'm having a conversation. Like, yes, I may be the business owner. Yes, I may be the final say and the technical quote boss, but we're all here doing this job together. And, I'm just trying to remember that we're all human and what does that look like in this conversation?
Yeah, and that's so important. I was actually having that conversation earlier today. It's like I am human first, and then everything else falls into it after. Because we all kind of have these roles that we have. We wear a
Mhm.
lot of hats, and a lot of the time people think that's what's defining of them, right?
Mhm.
And so, yeah, but really, it's actually you're a human, and then everything else that you do. So that's not who you are. It's just what you do, and I
Yeah.
think that's the thing,
But
right?
that's the first question that we ask people. Like, I remember very early on after starting my business, it was like my identity was so wrapped up in being an interior decorator and this is what I do. And like, I was like, well, who is Liz outside of that? And, what is she as a human? And so there's been a lot of exploration of that and trying to hold on to that as opposed to this role. Like, if this job goes away or if I don't want to do this job anymore, then how does that change things? And I hear that from a lot of other female entrepreneurs or just people in business because like I said, when you meet someone, it's hi, I'm Liz, this is what I do, or they ask me what I do. And it's like that's so strange. Like we need to find other questions to ask people right off the bat, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, oh, hi. Especially you ever had, I know I've had many times where I've actually sat down with someone, one of my very best friends. In fact, she was my maid of honor. I remember the very first time I met her, we just hit it off that we were talking for hours. We
Yeah.
were both dating these other guys. Neither one of us married them, but they were friends that introduced her and I. They went out to do something, and her and I just sat and had tea and talked for hours. And it was as if I'd known her my entire life. And we
Mhm.
didn't, we just talked about life. And I think that's where that's where it's falling short. When we go to networking events, people want to know, obviously, that's where you're going to know to get to either get people to collaborate with, to be referral partners, maybe. But what about just going to meet and have human connection, just
Yeah.
getting to know people with no other objective except just to like meet new people. I think that's something that's really starting to, for me at least, something that's I found to be really more important for me when I go to, especially networking and events that are online. A lot of them are online because I do work from home, and I do want to be able to say like I want to be able to just meet someone, say just get to know them, and I've even had women that I've met come on the podcast because I just love their story.
Yeah.
That to me is just It's not about like, oh, I want to work with you or collab with you or get referred by you. It's just, let's just get to know each other. So I love that.
Mhm.
So sorority housing is unique and meaningful. I think that's incredible, especially like with what your focus is. I think it's really there's a message behind that. So what impact do you see the projects having on women living in these spaces? Like the projects that you do when you are focusing on the housing projects, how does that align with your vision as a leader and how is that impacting the women that are living there?
Well, my hope is that the way it's impacting them is that it's creating a comfortable and safe environment and backdrop for their college years. This is the place where, depending on whether you live in or not, you may be sleeping, eating, studying, gathering here. And so it's important that it's comfortable, it's safe. Like I said, there's been a lot of talk since 2020 with the pandemic about mental health. And so that is a factor that gets discussed a lot about these rooms and, having private spaces, but also gathering spaces so people feel connected. And so all of that's kind of rolled into one. Like, yeah, it's easy to say, like, oh, they want a pretty house that looks good at recruitment because that's kind of what the outside world is looking at. And to an extent, yes, you want your sorority house to represent your organization well and to look good to potential new members that are coming through. But that's not at all where it stops. And that certainly isn't the crux of why you get involved in an organization like this. That's kind of the superficial starting point. And so I try to look at kind of those deeper levels of how our work can support these students as they're going through their college years, because there's a lot of changes and a lot of things that happen to them in that formative time.
I love that answer about you being a leader and how your leadership has evolved and why it's so important to you. Like, I really love that because it's important as women, as I said, we are the generation, or at least I know that I think I'm a little bit older than you are. And I look back on my generations behind me, and then you look behind the generations behind you, and it's like that ripple effect. And I
Mhm.
think if we can just be confident to support each other and be okay with the fact that we don't have to compete with each other. I think that's the big message. The reason why this podcast is so important to me is the message is no matter who you are, no matter where you live, no matter what lifestyle you're living, that there's possibilities for each and every one of us, and to be
Mhm.
inspired to hear the stories like yourself, what you're doing, and other women that I've had on the show, what they're doing is that no matter who you are, where you come from, it's possible and you can change your mind and you don't have to you don't have to do the things that everyone else is saying that you have to do, as an
Yep.
example, you
Yep.
know? Because I think that's where, a lot of, as we were talking earlier, the one lady that I knew who 1 year out of law school and she decided she didn't like it. I know that she could take it and use it for something else, and especially also someone that you know who's now doing what you do, and she was also going through law school, is
Mhm.
that the idea of what other people's expectations are for us is not necessarily the path we have to follow, I guess is what I'm trying
Mhm.
to say.
You are right. Yes.
So what advice would you give to women, aspiring to leadership, whether it's in design, whether it's in business or other industries? And are there any lessons specifically that you've learned that you believe are universal for success?
As far as advice that I would give first, I would say just get involved. So just look around and figure out what are your communities? Like, are you involved in a church? Do you go to a gym? What are the things that you do? If you are in business, are there networking organizations that you attend? And then look for what opportunities for leadership there are within that. You don't have to automatically try to be the president of some organization, or you can. You could start by just joining a committee and getting involved. And so I think leadership can be subtle and you can work your way up for it to be major. Or if you're just gung ho, you can jump right in. It really just depends on you, your personality, and what you're trying to achieve. I've kind of done that over the years. I used to do a lot of in-person networking. I was involved in committees and chaired things and chaired different events, and I really enjoyed all of that. And again, I think that was my chance to put into practice leadership skills that I had been taught and really hone them and figure out was most important to me. And so now I sort of take a step back in those things as I'm later in my career. And I just, when everything really slowed down, this is funny to come up again, 2020, I discovered like, oh, I don't want to always have to be doing this rat race or, I don't have to have this overly filled schedule. I can kind of hone in and choose things that are most important to me. And so I try to do less, but make sure they're higher quality to me and really align with like my values or my goals for the year. And so that kind of ties into what I would say has been successful for me. It's just assessing as my life changes and I go through different seasons in what ways I can be a leader and what level of leadership is appropriate for me at that time. And I just think if people can assess that periodically, it's not going to look the same over the entire course of their life or career. So just see what suits you best.
Yeah. And I think you touched on something really good. It was that for yourself, like your well being is so important and your
Mhm.
values are so important. And understanding that, like you were saying, going back to 2020, you started realizing I don't want to be living this lifestyle that maybe I was blind to before. Like I was blind to the fact that, working all these long hours until all of a sudden I realized I don't want this anymore. Right. And I
Mhm.
think in 2020, when that happened, a lot of people became really hyper aware of what their lifestyle was like. They just
Yep.
because they were normalizing, you know, their career choice, the working in the long hours. That was just, I guess, if they would say, those are the cards I was dealt. That's just how it is. That's how it goes. But as 2020 came, and I think it really did send the message that people don't really want to live that rat race lifestyle. They really truly don't.
Yep.
And you can still have quality of lifestyle and still putting in like the best that you can for your job and also have personal life that's also successful too. And
Mhm.
as a leader, you understand I got to take care of me so that I can go out into the world and do the things that I do. And I think that's what I really loved about you. What you were saying is like making sure that you weren't overly booked, but you did quality. You made sure that you were booked in a way that you did the work that you did the best that you could, but you didn't have to be overly booked to the point where it's like back to back to back to back, which a lot of people do. Like I've talked to
Yeah.
many women who've had back to back meetings and they're exhausted at the end of the day. And so
Mhm.
there's no quality of life there. So I love that you touched on that because that to me is really super important. It's about taking care of you to be the best that you can. And being a woman who is leading other young women, you're showing them, like I said, we've talked about this, they're not yet in the real world. When I say real world, we're talking about like going out and taking care of themselves and not having like school as being like that structure, right?
Yeah.
They're now going to go out into life. And life now has a structure, sort of a structure, but it's a little bit different. And they have to start making more life choices because a lot of choices were made for them. So I love the fact that this is important to you as a woman who leads other young women, teaching them about the importance of taking care of you, which is going to translate to them. They're going to see the way that you lead by example, as you were saying. So I love that. Looking ahead, what is your vision for PDR Interiors and your impact as a leader in the industry, in the decorating industry? Like, how do you hope that your work and mentorship will inspire future generations of women?
Well, I just hope that, again, leading by example, that people will find ways to get involved in their community and things that mean something to them and to use their business or their work in a way that can help others. I think that's what I try to do. And right now I'm starting to dabble a little bit into product creation and what could that look like in my business and in my life. And I'm excited about that because I think there's a lot of opportunity there. And so I'm starting to kind of head that way. But, overall, I just, like I said, I think my message is just to give back and see how you can help other folks.
I love that. It's like that joyously giving or generously giving or joyfully living, joyfully giving. I mean, that to me it's like, I look at it as, and it may sound corny, but when you give a gift to someone and you're so excited for
Yeah.
them to open it, like you might be more excited for them to open it than they are excited for getting it. And I'm not saying that they're not excited, but you're more excited. Well,
Mhm.
that's kind of like how I look at, I think, when I think about what we've talked about today, it's like that's what life really can be so joyful when you
Mhm.
come from that mindset of like, how can I give, like in the leadership, like living by example? What does that mean? And how is that giving back to the women who are watching me or the young men that are watching me or,
Yeah.
the people that I'm surrounded by daily? How are they watching me or even new interactions? So I love the fact that you have this great vision for living and giving back, and you're creating, I think, a great legacy. It's been a pleasure talking with you. I really love spending time talking with you about what you do, whether it's in leadership in or design company or what you're doing as with the young women. I have really, really loved getting to know you, and because we are newly connected, but
Mhm.
I really love what you're doing. I've enjoyed this conversation. I really enjoyed learning about your leadership style, some of the challenges that you've talked about, and the impact I believe you're making through what you do. I definitely think you're a shining example of how thoughtful leadership can inspire and empower others. So thanks again for being here, Liz. It's been incredible having you with me.
Oh, you're very kind. I appreciate it. I loved getting to have the conversation. I always enjoy connecting this way. So thanks for the opportunity, Leslie.
Oh, thank you. And to our listeners, if you'd like to connect with Liz directly or learn about PDR Interiors and her podcast, Sorority Chat, make sure that you check the show notes for her contact information. Remember, each step you take toward personal growth and authentic leadership shapes not just your path, but also inspires those around you. Lead with purpose, celebrate the small victories, embrace the journey, and allow yourself to step into the extraordinary life you are capable of creating. Until next time, keep dreaming, keep believing, and keep designing your extraordinary life one day at a time. Thank you for joining me on Her Extraordinary Life by Design. I hope you've been inspired and empowered by the incredible stories shared on this show. If you enjoyed this episode and the conversations we've had, I would greatly appreciate if you could take a moment to leave a review. Your feedback and support mean the world to me, and it will help others discover the podcast and join our empowering community. Remember to hit the subscribe button so you never miss an episode. Together, we can continue to learn from these amazing women, uncover their extraordinary journeys, and be motivated to create our own lives by design. Thank you again for tuning in. Until next time, stay empowered and keep shaping your extraordinary life one day at a time.
Everyone has heard about the U.S. space program, but what is actually going on at NASA? Get the real story in 4 minutes or less with the NASA Daily podcast from Electricast. Join astronauts and researchers as they conduct groundbreaking experiments, work on the International Space Station, and reach for the stars. NASA Daily, your cosmic update.
Electricast.
For those of you who dream of a world where music and podcasts live together in perfect harmony, now, for the first time, Electricast gives you a magical compilation, Pod Till You Drop, Volume 1, where we give you the best in tunes and the best in podcasts. Feast your ears and hear the culture. Available now wherever you listen to music.
Electricast.